Today we're going to be talking about Mars and Gemini through each of the houses and what this placement means for you if you have it in your chart. So with that being said, what Mars represents is it represents our willpower, what motivates us, how we take action, and how we accomplish things. And Gemini is a sign that represents the mind, it represents communication, and it also rules commerce, trade, and transportation because it is ruled by the planet Mercury, which is named after the Greek god of those things. He's the god of commerce, transportation, messages, and deliveries. So one thing I would say about Mars and Gemini is that they have an element of curiosity about them, and they have a very experimental approach to life wherein they have an idea and then they will act on that idea and see what the result is. Mars is also about attraction and how we pursue the object of our desires or the person that attracts us. So men that have Mars in Gemini will be very flirtatious and experimental or suggestive. Gemini is ruled by Mercury, and Mercury can be a trickster or Mercury can be a jokester. So their attraction approach can be to take a risk and see what the outcome is going to be, or to say something and experiment with the other person's mind, see how they will respond. So the other thing that I would say describes Mars and Gemini individuals is that these people are entrepreneurial. Gemini is inventive, and it's also opportunistic because it's ruled by Mercury. Mercury is about trade, sales, commerce, transactions, and information. So these people act on information, they act on new opportunities, and also they try to create new opportunities for themselves, and they look for the easiest way. They look for shortcuts in life. That's how I would say Mars and Gemini people are, because they have their Mars placement in the sign of intelligence, and a sign that's about ideas too. So for one, they're inventive and they're entrepreneurial on the most fundamental level, meaning they will create quick business schemes or quick ways of making money for themselves. However, the problem comes with sticking to a plan or sticking to a commitment, because Gemini is a mutable air sign. For one, air signs are scattered, and air in general just has to do with interaction, communication, and movement. So this is unrelated, but Mars and Gemini people are always on the go. They have this physical need to be active or to be in motion in life, so they stay very busy and they just go where opportunity takes them. They kind of just go with the wind. So a man with Mars and Gemini will always be going with the latest opportunities in his life and going wherever that takes him. But as I was saying though, they may have trouble committing to an idea or to a business or to an entrepreneurial endeavor, because for one, they're always moving to the latest thing, but also because Gemini is a mutable air sign. Mutable comes from the word mutation, and it's just representing change. So mutable signs are signs that are changing, and air is already a very changeable element. So Gemini can be one of the most fickle signs, and they have trouble with focus. And another way that this expresses itself is Gemini placement people, especially Mars and Gemini, will have a tendency to multitask and to be involved in many different simultaneous operations or conversations as well. Also, Mars and Gemini is a natural placement for salesmen, because Mars is assertive and it goes after what it wants, and Gemini is about communication. So Mars is showing you have this ability to achieve what you want or to go after what you want through asking for things or for asking for information and opportunities. So that's a pretty good overview of Mars and Gemini through each of the houses. Now, well, I mean, that's the overview. Now we'll talk about what it means through each of the houses. And before that, let's talk about a few celebrities that have displacement. Martin Luther King Jr. had displacement. Chris Evans, the actor who plays Captain America, has displacement. Natalie Portman has displacement. Uma Thurman, Marion Cotillard, Demi Lovato, Jim Morrison, Al Pacino, Sandra Bullock, Meryl Streep, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Kate Winslet, Victoria Beckham, Jose Bove, Naomi Campbell, the rapper, the artist, Adriana Lima, Courtney Love, Melania Trump, Mike Tyson, and Dwayne Johnson, The Rock. As well as Alexander the Great had displacement in his chart. Another great example of an opportunist, somebody that, seizes the moment. And I feel like Mars and Gemini people are the number one Mars placement that seizes the moment. And they're the most reactive to information and to circumstances. Coco Chanel had displacement, and Tyler the Creator has displacement, along with many others that I have not listed here. Tom Brady has displacement as well, who is an American football player, quarterback. And Gemini is about connection, is about air, so he knows how to throw the ball, and Mars is about athletic talent, so that air is no coincidence, is having to do with this ability to pass very precisely in his case. But anyway, let's talk about what this placement means through each of the houses. If you have Mars and Gemini in the first house, the entrepreneurial qualities of this placement become a part of your identity or personality, because that's what the ascendant and the first house represent. And so you're somebody that's always trying to make things happen in your life. Like, you're a natural entrepreneur, a natural person that chases opportunities or is always responding to the newest information or trends. You may be involved in commerce, and sales or trading, buying and selling stocks or merchandise. Mars also bestows a strong physique when it's in the first house. So you may have a muscular frame. And also, your voice will be perceived as quite assertive with this placement, because the ascendant and like the first house represent how we come across. So next, let's talk about Mars and Gemini in the second house. This placement shows somebody that's financially motivated, especially by opportunities, and they go wherever the money takes them. So the qualities of Mars and Gemini, which can be always on the go, get applied to these people's financial goals or the way that they make income. A lot of times the way that they make money, because the second house rules finances and it represents income as well. Well, a lot of times they have a very active approach to making money. So they have to go out into the world and like seize opportunities, or they have this need to go and make sales, or go and convince people, communicate, and promote things, or use their mercurial qualities. These are also natural strategists and planners. They like to create a plan for every goal that they have, and they don't like to take unnecessary risk. And whenever they do things, they like to do things well. Now, since the second house also represents talents, physical abilities could be one of your talents. So you could be athletically talented in some way, because this prominent planet itself is in that represents the physique and physical capabilities. It's in your second house of worth and of talents. So that could be another way that you even make income too. is through physical work or through athletic performance. Finally, this is one of the placements that shows somebody that can be actively involved in sales or commerce, because the second house is about our possessions, and Mars is very impulsive and like active. So when it's in the second house, especially in such a sign as Gemini, it shows somebody that always is doing something with their possessions. Like they always are moving those things from hand to hand, or exchanging them for money, or like constantly in the process of trade and selling things and buying things. They can have a lot of transactions, and they can be impulsive with money as well when it comes to expenditures. So next, this leads us to Mars and Gemini in the third house. This is a placement that shows somebody that's very intellectual about how they accomplish things. They have a very mental approach to action, and they always like to think their actions through. They could be natural schemers, natural strategists, and they will also be natural communicators. A lot of times the way they accomplish things is through communication. So through contacting people, through asking around for the opportunities. And a lot of times that's the ways that you've had to push things forward in your life. Also, when you're attracted to somebody, you often have to make the first step in starting the communication, especially if you're a male. If you're a woman though, and the person is not making the first move, it's like a lot of times Mars is showing that your way of stepping into the role of initiator is through initiating the conversation. Overall, you can be a scattered multitasker in general, because Mars shows that you like to act on your ideas and like basically your mind. So you can find yourself switching interest or switching focus all the time based on your changing mind and your changing interests. So next, this leads us to Mars and Gemini in the fourth house. The fourth house is ruled by the moon. It's about our emotions, the things that matter to us, and is where we invest time, care, and energy. And then Gemini is a sign that rules the mind. It rules communication. So and then Mars is about action. I feel like overall, this is one of the placements that creates a creative individual or like an artistic individual, because art is the representation of an emotion or a feeling onto the physical plane or onto a physical projection, and the fourth house is about emotions, and it's about the creative process. And furthermore, Mars in Gemini creates like a very inspired energy, and somebody that's always having ideas and acting on their ideas. So another thing about these people is that they really look for the easiest way to go by in life, and they always look for shortcuts, because the fourth house is also where Mars is debilitated, and it's because the fourth house rules comfort and it opposes ambition. The 10th house is all about ambition. So these people will only feel the drive to do something if they feel like doing it, because the fourth house is about feelings. And then Mars in Gemini shows a natural schemer, a natural opportunist, and somebody that looks for opportunities, shortcuts, and just information. So they will always find ways to live the most comfortable life, or like to expend the least amount of energy, I feel like. So next, this leads us to Mars and Gemini in the fifth house. The fifth house is expressive and creative, and Gemini is about ideas or communication. So these people really project their ideas in a way that it can be heard, and these can be very good debaters, because Mars is about competition, and Gemini is about our opinions. So these people have a strong ego attachment to their opinions, and they can get into conflicts, disagreements, or debates with others. Also, the fifth house with Mars in it is athletically gifted. So you could have some sort of agility or physical gifts that make you good at some sort of sport. because the fifth house is all about performance and being seen, and it's also about recognition. So your physical talents can receive recognition from a young age. Now the other thing is Gemini is about ideas, and Mars in Gemini is very inspired. So in the fifth house, these are people that are inspired to be creative, and they just get a lot of inventive ideas or things they want to put out into the world, and they want to receive credit for the things they came up with first. Mars in Gemini in the sixth house can show somebody that's constantly busy and on the move, because the sixth house is about routine and habits. And so these people can constantly be running errands and whatnot. Because also the sixth house is about accomplishing tasks and responsibilities. It's also about our work life. So sales, commerce, or communication can be a big part of one's job. Another thing about having Mars in the sixth house is that exercise can be very important to one's health and to one's, mental well-being, because Mars is about physical release, or like physical activity, and the sixth house is about health and habits. So you will find that your mental health gets greatly relieved and improved when you exercise, because a lot of times your mental activity needs a physical release when you have this placement, because not only is Gemini ruled by Mercury, which is about the mind, but so is the sixth house. And the sixth house is about information, and it can be about stress too, because it can be about worrying or having mental overload. So overall, how I would describe this placement is people that have this need to have a physical release for their mental activity. Mars in Gemini in the seventh house now is the placement that we're going to talk about, and this one shows somebody that is a natural collaborator. They have a very collaborative spirit, and they have this tendency or this passion to look for opportunities in other people or through other people. The seventh house is about others and how we relate to others, and a lot of times Mars in the seventh house can struggle with procrastination, except when they have the element of accountability to their goals. And this is because your Mars placement shows that your willpower is activated when you have others around you, or when you have a partner. And that's because Mars rules willpower, and it's in your house of relationships and other people. The other thing is that these are both air placements. The seventh house is an air house, and Gemini is an air sign. Air is about interaction and communication. So these individuals are motivated to network, to interact, and to accomplish things through communication and meeting other people. A lot of times the way that they make money, or the way that they stay afloat in life, can be a little bit fickle, because this placement has excessive air energy. So a lot of times you're getting by through life through very superficial opportunities, and constantly going through others or relationships to carry yourself. That is with the exception of if you have other placements that show different things, such as placements in the second house or in earth signs. But in general, these people can stay afloat financially or in the world by constantly being proactive and on the go, always moving, always meeting new people, and they can sustain themselves through that. They can live a lifestyle that sustains them. But again, the ways that they can create finances for themselves can be sometimes superficial or fickle, or it can always be changing. They can always have to pursue a new opportunity in order to stay afloat. Again, this is double air energy, and air is quite superficial, and it lacks the substance that earth has, and also the dependability and longevity that earth placements would denote. I don't know how many times I'm going to say opportunist, but Mars in Gemini in the 8th house shows a natural opportunist, somebody that's strategic, entrepreneurial, and always scheming, coming up with ways to make money. Mercury rules Gemini, and Mercury has the reputation of being a trickster or a deceiver. So when it's in the 8th house, which is a malefic house, some of these individuals have this ability to scam or to steal. Mercury was the god of thieves. That will not always be the case, but what is the case when Mars is in Gemini, is in the 8th house, is that these are financially motivated people, and they're always looking for opportunities to make a bigger buck, or to make a buck in general. And as opposed to Mars and Gemini in the 2nd house, which will use their own possessions and kind of trade what they have for more money or buy and sell things. The 8th house represents the possessions of others. So Mars and Gemini in the 8th house would try to look to make money through what they can get from others, or from utilizing the talents of other people as the basis, or using the money or the resources of other people as the basis of how they make money, or of how they can acquire wealth. Overall, Mars is impulsive, so in the 8th house, which represents debt and it represents the money of other people, this placement can show somebody that makes impulsive expenditures with debt, like impulsive credit card expenses, or they might impulsively pursue a business idea and just put on a lot of debt in order to do so. So sometimes they can lack patience in this house. So next, this leads us to Mars and Gemini in the 9th house. This is a very inspired placement for Mars, because the 9th house is about inspiration, motivation, and adventure. So the main drive for these people to stay on the go all the time is this need for adventure and new experiences, and also to follow their passions. So for one, these people are natural opportunists and business people, and they use this skill in order to stay afloat with their passions, or in order to live a life that is in alignment to their passions, or to what brings them inspiration. Overall, I would say these people are great at monetizing things. So they'll take whatever interest they have, and they'll have this ability to turn it into a career, because Mars is very entrepreneurial, and they'll just find a way to make money from their passions. Next, we have Mars and Gemini in the 10th house. The 10th house is the exaltation house for Mars, and it's all about ambition and discipline, hard work, patience, consistency. And and the sign Gemini is very scattered, and it's about information, is about change, is about trends, and is about opportunities. So with this placement, it could show that you work in a field that is constantly changing, or where you constantly have to adapt to new information, and you have this strong discipline to succeed in this realm. So you're always pushing forward with your own success, and it requires you a lot to adapt to new information, new changes, and new trends in society. So this could be, for example, a blogger, a journalist, or like a YouTuber, and like any type of career that revolves around information and analytics in order to make money. And so anyway, the other thing is, these people could be motivated to communicate as their profession. Like that could be their main ambition, and like they can go very far in the realm of communication. That's what it means, because Capricorn and the 10th house are about going far in something and staying persistent, and like building a very big track record. And then Mars and Gemini shows the way that you're doing that is through communicating or through sales. So building a large track record of sales for yourself, a large like resume, or like if it's a blog, like constantly posting information, or like consistently posting new articles and new information. Or it could be videos, because Gemini is about the media too. So these people are just motivated to succeed in the realm of media and communication. That's what I would say. Or in a world of constantly changing trends. Next, we have Mars and Gemini in the 11th house. Mars in the 11th house is rebellious because the 11th house is ruled by Uranus. Uranus is the rebel. It's about change and it's about autonomy. It's about, freedom, self-reliance. And so when Mars is here, it shows a naturally entrepreneurial person because of the Gemini influence that tries to be free from the system. They try to live a financially free life. That's kind of what motivates them, is just their freedom and their autonomy. They don't like to be controlled, and they like to be bosses of themselves. Also, these people are very enterprising that have Mars in the 11th house. So what does enterprising mean? That just means they're ambitious and like inventive at the same time. It's like a combination of those two words. That's what enterprising means. So they'll find a new way to succeed. Like they'll find a new way to make money, or they'll carve their own path for themselves. And a lot of times they will experiment a lot to get there because Mars is in Gemini. So these are people, they're curious, but they're also entrepreneurial, and they pursue a lot of different opportunities. And since Gemini is an air sign, we talked about how this can lead them to be very scattered and have difficulty committing to something. And also the 11th house is an air house, so this doesn't help in that facet. However, the 11th house is a fixed house. It's a fixed air house. So the fixed aspect helps them commit to goals, or like commit to a way of making money, because fixed is about constantly staying the same, or like constantly staying focused on one thing. And usually that's their freedom. So usually the need to be financially free or to be an entrepreneur, it kind of forces them to commit to certain business ideas that they have that end up working out. And it's because they could never see themselves going back to the old way of living. They could never see themselves back as a slave to society's systems or like to corporations. But yeah, these people are just very inventive. They can be creative as well, and they're just ambitious and rebellious, I would say, as well. They have a strong need to stick to their opinions, I would say. And they will fight for their opinions, and they will be ruthlessly logical or critical when they do so. So they will prove you wrong if you try to debate them on their opinions. Finally, we have Mars in Gemini in the 12th house. This shows an individual that is imaginative, creative, and inventive, because the 12th house brings the water element to the mix of this placement. And water is all about being formless. Water can be formed into anything that, as a physical substance. So in the astrology sense, water is this ability to formulate an idea, or formulate something creative and new, something artistic. The 12th house is about imagination, perception, and the subconscious mind. And Gemini is about ideas. It's about being experimental, inventive. So these people are experimental artists in life, and they are likely motivated to pursue their visions or like their imagination in some way, and to be entrepreneurial about how they do that. So like they will have a dream, or they will have an artistic interest as shown by Mars being in the 12th house, and they will try to monetize it, which they do very well at because Mars is in Gemini, who is very entrepreneurial. And other than that, these are big dreamers of the zodiac. With that being said, that is Mars and Gemini through each of the houses. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll talk to you soon in another video.